Kenyan human rights activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo remain missing in Uganda after what opposition figures and rights groups are calling a mafia-style abduction. Now, the pair were reportedly seized by armed men while attending a campaign rally for Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine. The incident has been strongly condemned, with Wine accusing the government of targeting them simply for associating with his cause. Now, both Ugandan police and army spokespeople deny having the men in custody. This latest disappearance comes against the backdrop of a deepening and alarming pattern of cross-border abductions and enforced disappearances targeting activists and opposition figures across East Africa. Well, we are now joined by our panel of African affairs analysts to explore the regional implications and accountability in this growing crisis. We're joined by Godwin Toko. He's an activist and deputy team. Well, I'm told that we have not connected with him. And we also have Ronald Sam Wanda, his managing partner, Matsiko, Wanda Arinda Advocates, Kampala, Uganda. We have Mwanase Ahmed as well. She's an activist, Kilifi, Kenya. Thank you so much, gentleman and lady, for joining us at this time.
You're welcome, and thank you for hosting us.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
You're welcome, and thank you for hosting us.
Thank you. All right, so let me begin with you, Ronald. Ronald, speak to us on, what is actually going on, because the Ugandan police have denied, and the army spokesperson's directive also says that they don't have any of the activists in custody. So how plausible is it that the abduction of these two activists was carried out without the tactic or even direct knowledge of a state security architecture?
Thank you so much. It's very unfortunate that we have human beings, individuals, go missing, and also the people who have witnessed their act of the disappearance confirmed that they were arrested by gunmen. We have a challenge in the country where people with guns in civilian clothes, whom you cannot easily identify to belong to a particular security organ, wantonly arrest people and disappear them. What we are seeing today is what has happened prior to date. About now 2 months, we have another activist called Sam Wanda who was disappeared from the western part of the country. To date, he has not been seen. The police have denied knowing where he is. The Ugandan Coast Defense Forces have denied knowing where he is. We've obtained orders for habeas corpus, and they have refused to produce him in the court. So what is happening to our dear brothers from Kenya is something that was orchestrated by the state. It's not new. It's unfortunate that both the police and the UPDF have denied knowledge of their whereabouts. Yeah. But I can speak with certainty that there is no civilian, there is no other person who can abduct another person in this country except the security organs.
Okay, now let's pass the same question to Mwanase. Mwanase, speaking of the police and army's denial, do you think that the fragmented denial by both of them does it reveal anything about the control and accountability within the Ugandan security forces?
Yeah, as was already mentioned, thanks for having me, but I do believe that it was certainly an abduction by the Ugandan security forces. There's a huge culture of impunity and neglect to rule of law. We can see even when Museveni's son claims or accepts and acknowledges that he has someone being held in his basement and torturing them, as was the case with Eddie Mutwe, who was also first denied being in their custody. He later then turns up in court with clear torture marks. So There's been many instances of enforced disappearances, of torture, of kidnapping. Even at the moment, we're being told that he might be being held at the military barracks at a specific one, although there's no way of accessing that space. I would want to add to this that the gas station of which he was abducted from happens to also be owned by another regional dictator, Ruto. And therefore, if CCTV footage was requested, it would also very clearly show the abduction and the kidnapping. So we are aware that these two are being held by Ugandan security forces, and would wish that if they did commit a crime, they should be presented in court and charges brought forward, and if not, released unconditionally.
All right, now still on you, Mwanase, but how credible, is there any credibility to the claim, that Uganda's security apparatus is now targeting foreign activists linked to Bobi Wine's campaign?
I believe that we've seen multiple examples of cross-border transnational repression between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and I would even include Rwanda within that. There's been, since last year, we had over 100 cases within Kenya. We had 36 members of Uganda's Democratic Change Forum abducted in Kenya and brought back to Uganda. Ugandan opposition Kiza Besigye and Haji Obeid were also abducted in Kenya, deported to Uganda. So there are multiple cases of clear collaboration between Kenyan, Tanzanian, and Ugandan security forces. It is clear that our governments are working closely together to implement the East African abduction policy, and that they're afraid of their own citizens. These governments are afraid of any voice of dissent. They're afraid of any opposition, and rule of law has been suspended because they're not able to retain, public support through constitutional leadership. So they're choosing to disappear, abduct, detain, torture, and even misuse the law processes by bringing forth treason charges, terrorism charges against their own citizens as a mechanism of repression.
All right, now let's hear from, before then, I'm told that Godwin Toko has actually joined us. Godwin, if you can hear me, thank you for joining us. All right, it seems we have issues with him still. We will try to reconnect with him as well. So let's come back to you, Ronald. Ronald, are there any immediate, legal or even diplomatic pressure that can be put on the Kenyan government, in partnership with regional blocs like the EAC or even the AU to compel Kampala to urgently disclose the activists' whereabouts and even ensure their safe return?
Thank you so much. One, I think, yes, we need the intervention from diplomatic and legal entities. The challenge we have is that the two governments have gone in cohort of abducting its citizens and transferring them back to their countries. I would not be shocked if the two are in detention in Uganda or if they have already been taken back to Kenya for trial. Why do I say that? If Uganda really indicates that they do not know the whereabouts of these two individuals, we have a proper immigration system. They should just inform us in the immigration system when they spoke to the country and when they left the country. But as we know, is that this part of the country and they cannot be found. Now the challenge we have is that for Uganda's case, even the civic space has been strangled. As I gave you an example, we have someone who has disappeared, who was contesting actually for MP. He has disappeared for almost 2 months, despite the intervention of civil society, despite the intervention of the lawyers and obtaining the necessary legal remedies, like orders of writ of habeas corpus. The state has continuously denied having him. Yet when he was being abducted, he was abducted during the day, and there are eyewitnesses who saw the abduction for home. So it's quite hard, even for the entities to push the government of Uganda to disclose the whereabouts. And our government is known for abducting people. So this is not strange. This is not new to us. What we do is that whatever has happened is very unlawful.
Okay. Now, coming back to you, Mwanase, rights groups, including the Law Society of Kenya and Amnesty Kenya, have actually called this another alarming case in a wider pattern. And you did mention a few activists that were kidnapped as well. So how strong is the evidence for a regional trend of cross-border disappearances? Are we seeing coordination between states? Because you did say that the fuel station where one of them was kidnapped belongs to a dictator from another country.
Yeah, thank you. I would also add, just to reinforce what has already been said, there was also somebody, Robert, I believe his name was, who was abducted in the Entebbe airport, who was there with his family, was taken and then was never produced again. So these abductions that happen in broad daylight, in public spaces, or on dictator Ruto's premises in Uganda, shows that there's complete impunity. And then when the Ugandan state comes out to deny holding people, it's very clear because there's evidence of them being taken. Now, to answer your question, there's been multiple cases, and it shows clear collaboration between both states. Kenya, for example, has been tracking its citizens very well, and there's been coordinated abductions throughout the country. So if there was interest in knowing the location of those who have been abducted in foreign countries, I believe there would also be quite, between the three states, there's very strong surveillance capacity to find and locate them. Now, when Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire, for example, were disappeared in Tanzania, they went from the police station and were put into military vehicles and brought to torture chambers. The Kenyan and Ugandan governments were very clearly involved in that process as well. And from the information that we've received, there was actually, both publicly as well as privately, basically a green light and a thumbs up to do whatever you like to our citizens because they bother us. So when governments have to turn to torture, sexual abuse, murder of dissentful voices and collaborating on that process, we can see with the case of Besigye, we can see Mwabili Mwagodi, who was also abducted in Tanzania. We had the 36 of Ugandans who were abducted in Kenya and deported. So there's a continuous collaboration. To answer about the diplomatic pressure, it's once again, now it's day 4, coming into day 4, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have not shown any interest in finding their citizens, which was the same as the case of Boniface and Agatha. We actually had government spokespeople publicly supporting the abduction and the detention. So I would say citizens are really left on their own to do what they can to try to apply pressure in all ways possible. But the regional bodies, the local bodies, and the government bodies whose mandate is to protect their citizens continue to fail us. Being said, we'll continue to put pressure on them and do believe that they must fulfill their constitutional mandates, yet goodwill is certainly never shown, and rather coordinated suppression is what we see.
Absolutely. Still on this, Ronald, but what precedents, do those cases that she has actually mentioned set, for accountability or even impunity in East Africa?
Sorry, I beg your question?
I said, what precedents, do the cases that she has actually mentioned, of some of the activists who have been abducted, what precedent does it set for accountability or even impunity in Eastern Africa?
Thank you so much. The precedents that so far we have, the cases of where we've had abductions and forced disappearances, actually do set a very bad precedent, one for personal liberty, rights of others, but also for accountability purposes. As she indicated, the Ugandans who were deported last year in July and Dr. Kiza Besigye, the state of Kenya has not in any way even come out to explain how those abductions and forced transfer back to Uganda happened. When we had the Boniface Mwangi and Agatha highway abductions in Tanzania, we've not received any explanation from the government of Tanzania on what happened and why it happened. So, as I said earlier, the 2 or 3 East African states have gone in cohort to abduct citizens of other countries. So if you're in Kenya and the Ugandan will be abducted and brought to Uganda, actually in the 36 women had a refugee who were drawn from Uganda for political persecution purposes, and he was a fully registered refugee in Kenya. He's among those people who were abducted and brought back to Uganda, and then he was also charged with an offense of terrorism. So the precedent that is being set is alarming. We are worried, and more so right now in Uganda, where we are headed to the campaigns. We do seem to see that such abductions and arrests are going to continue. As we are looking at these Kenyans, we've also had some who have been arrested in the last couple of weeks, and those who belong to the National Unity Platform, and they have been charged with some felony offenses of unlawful drilling. And all these have been charged and remanded, and they cannot even get bail from our court. So it's quite alarming and disturbing of where we are headed.
Okay. Now, when I say, are there implications also, I'm speaking politically and security-wise, for the EAC when member states are credibly accused of violating the free movement and fundamental human rights of citizens from other member states within the bloc? I'm speaking because you've mentioned quite a few that have been abducted over the years, and it doesn't seem like, any of the countries or either of the countries have been held accountable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would add that Suluhu actually openly admitted, and I do have a video of her admitting that she directed what happened to Boniface and Agatha, and that if anyone else tries, they will also do the same. So as much as it was definitely an accidental admission, but there has been an open admission, which should help in her prosecution of her hand in executing those crimes. On that precedent, right now, the implications are that if you speak up at all against your own government, if you are interested in political positions, even at MP level, as mentioned, you're not safe in your own country and you're not safe traveling throughout the East African community. It appears that the concept of Jumuiya and the concept of the EAC only applies to politicians. They are welcome to openly travel, go to each other's, inaugurations or ceremonies, connect and have political strategy, abduction strategy. They do business together. There's a lot of relationships between these East African countries, yet we're seeing people being detained in airports, disappeared, murdered, tortured, with impunity. So the precedent is that East Africans are not safe. We're not safe in our own countries, and we're not welcome to travel freely in the East African community, which is actually for the people, not just for the politicians. Being said, East Africans are not just going to sit back and tolerate this continued decline in democracy, and we see the dictatorships and we see the patterns that are happening of, long tenures, not giving up power, not having free and fair elections, no voices of dissent, unlawful processes. So, the shutdown of internet, all of these trends and how you continue to slip away the democratic freedoms that have been fought for. So as East Africans, as Africans, we're going to continue working together and collaborating as we must to safeguard our democratic spaces, to stand up for our people, and, to fight for the East Africa that we all deserve.
Okay. All right. Now, Ronald, how much risk does this episode pose to Bobi Wine's campaign narrative, that the regime will use any force, extrajudicial tactics, to intimidate supporters ahead of the 2026 vote. Do you think that this could this galvanize or frighten away his base?
Of course, the security agencies' intention is to frighten, frustrate, and scare people away from such campaigns, but also to deter when and also probably also distract him from continuing ahead with his campaign. I know he's still in the eastern part of the country, trying to gather for the campaigns and elections and talk to his supporters. But such actions are meant to distract him and his entire party, because the arrests, as I can assure you, we do not think they will stop what those two. The arrests are going to be happening over and over. They have had several blockades even during the campaign, which is just 1 week in. Police is struggling to deter them from accessing particular venues and particular roads. And they believe that that's the best way to do politics, of course, which we believe is very wrong. But we know that as a nation, one day, people will stand up to their rights, and they will surely listen to the dissenting voices and vote for those such people. Thank you.
Thoughts here. In what ways has this, climate of fear and insecurity affected the work of human rights defenders and even civil society organizations regionally, forcing them to retreat from transnational advocacy?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your question. Was that for me?
Yes, it was. I was asking if there are ways in which this particular climate of fear and insecurity has affected the work of human rights defenders and civil society organizations regionally.
I would say it absolutely has. There's been a lot of death. There's been a lot of disappearances. Even Bob and Njagi was abducted for a month last year in Kenya, subject to torture. None of us want to see more bloodshed. None of us want to lose ourselves or each other. I do believe there's still a very strong desire for change. All of this, I think there's patterns across East Africa and beyond, that a lot of the reasons that we organize is because of socioeconomic challenges, infrastructural challenges, livelihood challenges that affect the people of our countries. So that's not going away. It doesn't seem to be going away as long as our countries are led by corrupt, greedy, and incompetent dictators. So there has been certain people who are afraid of speaking up at times. Yeah. But, as Fanon says, you cannot kill an idea whose time has come. So of all of the abductions, the disappearances, with the security threats in mind, people are taking certain measures to better safeguard themselves to their best capacity. But nobody will stop. I can see Boniface on the screen. Nobody will stop fighting for a better future and for a better country. We do see an absence and a gap in certain, let's say, legacy institutions always standing up and speaking up and fighting for rights. And sometimes we have the citizens who have to just fill those gaps. Yeah. We're currently running a campaign in Kenya to release hundreds of youth who are also being held on terrorism, trumped-up terrorism charges after the protests. So as human rights defenders, as active citizens, as East Africans, Africans who care about our communities and our people and our future, no amount of violence, threats against us is going to stop the dream that we have of a better and safer and healthier country for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much, gentleman and lady. It was quite an interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us and speaking so passionately on this. We've just spoken to Ronald Sam Wanda, Managing Director, Matsiko, Wanda Arinda Advocates in Kampala, Uganda, and Mwanase Ahmed, activist in Kilifi, Kenya. Thank you so much once again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.